Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ask a NaviGuide, part of the Abundant Aging podcast series. I'm Mike, your host, and on this show, we are tackling subjects in aging and family caregiving that can be stressful to work through. And we're doing this with tips and advice from United Church Home's NaviGuide team. Our NaviGuides have had decades of experience helping families through stressful issues in aging and caregiving. And we hope what we share on this show will help everyone everywhere age with abundance, as we call it, but at the very least, hopefully lower some stress and that you may be feeling and even save you some time. So thanks for your time today. And I want to thank our NaviGuide, Kimberly, for giving her time to us as part of our Dementia series. And Kimberly, you're such a passionate advocate for those with dementia. And today we're going to be talking about the later stages of dementia and what people might expect, or at least what you've seen from your experience as somebody enters into what we call late stage dementia, and maybe some techniques people can employ to help manage that. But before we get started, I'm going to read this statement. The opinions shared in this podcast are those of myself and our amazing NaviGuides and are not meant to convey or take the place of clinical, legal, or other professional advice. So once again, hello, Kimberly.
Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you again. So just to give us your background again, you are passionate about dementia care. You've been passionate since a young age. You started out working in a memory care unit when you were just in your teens, right?
I did, and it was the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Did you think about that? Did you think that when you first started, or what was it about that made it so valuable to you?
I didn't know what it was when I first started. I had never heard of what an activities assistant was or a memory care unit. When I applied, it was just about that paid a lot more than just a hostess job did. But once I got in there and that door opened up, which I now know was no accident, there was very real, relatable bonds that happened and took place between me and the residents. And it was crazy to me because nobody my age, middle age, no one could seem to get it like some of the residents did with some of the isolation factors that I had experienced throughout my teenage years. I witnessed them, they didn't have many visitors. They were alone, just kind of left to do their own thing. And I don't know, a real bond developed where I didn't want them to be alone no more. I wanted them to know, hey, I feel you and I'll be here for you.
That's wow. And you working in a memory care unit, it would typically be in a memory care unit because it was determined that by the family or them or whatever, that, look, I need consistent help. I cannot live alone. So I would guess that the majority of the people that you interacted with would be more in the late stages of dementia, Alzheimer's, that sort of thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so what would be the sort of the typical behaviors you might see from someone? I know that dementia hits everyone differently because it's a very personal disease, but were there any kind of through lines or when you were advised to sort of manage the residents, were there any kind of like universals that you were instructed to do? Or?
Yeah, no, a lot of the common symptoms that we see in late stage dementia is probably the largest one, struggle with communication. Very difficult with speech and trying to communicate what they're feeling, what they're wanting. I had a resident one time who the whole staff called him Rare because all he could physically, verbally say, Rare, as he walked around. And yeah, just communication, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And would you ever see problems with people maybe forgetting to eat or drink regularly or things like that?
Yes, all the time. We would have to work on a schedule. At first, I was an activities assistant, so all I did was the activities, help them with bingo, and there was quite a few residents that would just sit there and have just a very dazed out stare at the table, but we would go and actually put the bingo chip on their card for them so they wouldn't be left out.
And this was not United Church Homes at the time, right? Just like we have our own Comfort Matters program, but this is, yeah, and everything's anonymized and all that. But I just enjoy hearing your perspective when you first started.
Yeah, that was still in my teen years. And then as I progressed to become a CNA, shortly after, we would have to do every 3-hour rounds, check on, and they would have a schedule of what time they would eat and bathe, stuff like that.
Yeah. So in later stages of the disease, we've talked about this before. It's almost like the front part of your brain goes first, which is the short-term memory, and then I can't remember everything, but then you have this right side of the brain where I think your musical memory lies and your swear words rise and all that. So I guess that leads to some pretty interesting behaviors, right?
It does. Yes, it does. It's not unusual to be cursed out in the memory care unit. But you just have to take a step back and realize that's not that person talking. They're really struggling to find the right word or the right thing to say. They're trying to tell you something, or they're just having a moment where some of those neurological connections are misfiring and they're saying whatever they can. And in those moments, it's especially important to really meet people where they are. Don't get upset. Be patient. Show that grace factor.
Yeah, and that's so important, right? Because this is very stressful stuff, and it's very hard to hear that. I remember there was a great documentary that came out. I think it's called "I'll Be Me," but it's about Glenn Campbell. Glenn Campbell, who the singer. I'm not going to. I might sing. I am a lineman for the county, and they would show him on stage doing his concert and doing his music like the top of a hat, just because his musical memory was still there. And I think we see that in our units. We have musical therapy programs, and we can see people like just really suddenly engaged, right?
Yes, no doubt. And I've actually experienced that firsthand. Picture that bingo game we just talked about. Everybody's sitting around, most of them at the latter stages, just gazing off. And next thing, a guest comes in to do the piano, and Amazing Grace starts playing. You would never know those two people were the same person that was just playing that bingo game. They lit up, and it was almost everyone in unison singing that song. And it just really wow. Thank you.
We don't, there's so many things we just don't know about the brain. And in that film, they showed Mr. Campbell. And it was very transparent to the family to do this, but there were moments where he was getting extremely agitated and fighting for the words and being belligerent and things like that. And he's, by all accounts, such a great guy. And so I think that's really important for people to hear. Kimberly, this is not the person. And it's hard to say, don't take it personal.
Yeah, I like to tell people, see the person, not the disease. They are still every bit as unique despite what symptoms they're portraying or struggles they're experiencing right now.
Yeah. And even if they forget their name, and if they seem not to recognize you, your presence is still there, right? If you're someone that makes this person feel good, they'll show it.
Oh, yes. And I'm going to try not to get emotional, but you triggered a story. It was dinner time at one of the nursing homes that I used to work at. And I was coming off shift because I had been there most of the day, but I offered to help the kitchen aides and all bring out the residents that needed to be brought out. A lot of them needed assistance walking. So I went by one of this sweet lady's room, and she was sitting on the bed, and she definitely had late stage Alzheimer's disease. But she was sitting there holding a picture of her and her husband in this military uniform on their wedding day. I had never once heard her speak an audible word since I had worked there. And as I walked in, all it took was her looking up, seeing a human being there, which was me. That presence alone was strong enough to trigger her emotional response. And she just started crying and holding that picture frame. And it was just, I sat down with her, I held her, I cried right along. And it's like, how lucky am I to have these arms to hold her in this very moment? The presence matters, yes, to answer your question.
Yeah. The concept of grace, of forgiveness, of patience. Some people have it naturally, some people don't. But just to know that you're not alone in these situations, right? Just to know that people have dealt with it, and that people empathize.
That's what we all want, isn't it? Just to be met where we're at, no matter what we're going through. Just take the time to hear my heart. Maybe not the words I'm saying, maybe not the lack of words, but please just see me. And I just think that's what they would say to us if they were able to.
Because that's what it's all about, fear of losing your identity, whether, you're moving from your home into another home or into this. It's this but having that comfort to know what's important to you. What did you used to do for a living? What hobbies? Who are your family members? That sort of thing. There's no one size fits all to the actual care model, right? It's just really understanding those important things. And I think I saw somewhere that we or somebody else may have taken care of someone that used to be an accountant, and we give them spreadsheets to work on. How are you doing here? It's, oh man, they're working me to death, but it's great.
Yeah, that's called what I like to call and push the person-centered approach. Really meeting that person, knowing their whole background, what their interests are or were, so that way you can give them more tailored assistance and services.
So I'm trying to recover from your story here, but let me just see if I can bring it to actually a practical advice question that I have. Eating, drink. Let's focus on drinking. So drinking water and things like that. Somebody may not be drinking, but can you cue them? Or if you take drinks, is there any techniques you picked up on maybe how to encourage somebody to take a drink of water when they need to?
I've heard of circumstances where the cueing does work. The nurses were a lot better at it. They could probably do that a lot better. But there is a stage towards the latter middle stages, but especially the end, where people just refuse to eat or drink. There's a straight up refusal going on, insisting they're not hungry, fighting, really getting combative when you're trying to help them. There was a lot of creative things that I saw employees do as a teamwork effort to help with that hydration factor. The IV would be the last resort. But
sure.
Yeah, a lot of things. They had their meds time. There's a pill crusher, and they'd put it in some applesauce, and then just spoon feed them. That would be some form of hydration in that moment.
Right. And just for cueing, I'm sorry, that's like an inside baseball term. It's like, I have a glass of water, I'm drinking it in front of them. It's kind of like I yawn, other people yawn, that sort of trick. Yeah, it was just a question top of my head, but I really, appreciate that. And I love the note you had about, because, when you have somebody that's agitated, knowing who they are and what's important to them, that's you can find little techniques to calm them down, right?
Absolutely. Knowing just certain details, to be able to hang what would be memorable photos, of their favorite movie star, back in their day, or baseball player, something, for those brief moments that they are fully cognizant of their time and place. There's I don't know if it's a new invention or if it's just recently being advertised. I don't know, but it's something that's so helpful. It's a hug, a weighted stuffed animal that gives you a hug. I don't know what the proper word is for it, but it's awesome because it just, rests around their neck and they can rest their arms. And sometimes with the normal, lovely, fun stuff of aging, with arthritis or whatever kicks in, if you've got a cramp, it's a soft, very soft sensory stimulation that can trigger some of those other regions of, hey, just in those moments.
Right. Because, overstimulation seems to be, the calming effect of things. So you're not going to put on network television because it might just be too exciting. I mean, we've seen, there are robotic kind of pets that are not that expensive. And if somebody is, closer to, maybe there used to be if they're a mother or they used to be a nurse, we give them a baby, maybe a baby doll to hold and things like that. But this point about meeting people where they are, one of the things I did hear was if you're in early stage dementia, if you've just gotten diagnosed, sort of, and I know this sounds a little creepy, but follow me on this, life memorialization, like taking the time to actually, and I think there's online services for this, but you actually can go through and memorialize, like you tell your story, tell your life, sort of what have you learned, perspectives, great. But that's also maybe a moment where you can kind of say, hey, if I've ever agitated, you may want to play maybe this song right?
Yes. And you're basically reliving The Notebook, that movie. He reads her the story that she wrote. You've never seen The Notebook?
I've never seen The Notebook.
Followers comment on that. I'm not going to touch that one.
Yeah, sorry. Mike has not seen The Notebook, but apparently. I should see the notebook. So
Yes, you should. But yes, the story and what you're saying is, yes, you read the memories, the wording and stuff of their life story or their preference of what to do if I become agitated. This might help. And then in those moments of clarity, they thank you. And they come to.
well, I'm glad to get to. I'm glad that I'm not misremembering a technique here. So thank you. Anything else you want our audience to know about this topic, Kimberly? Or any resources? Yeah.
Give yourself grace. Please do not walk this journey alone. Get support. There are so many wonderful people out there waiting to hold your hand through this journey. We all need that, no matter what stage of life we are. And please, yes, Alzheimer's Association is there. UCH, the NaviGuides, we're here.
Yeah. On that note, I will pick it up. Alzheimer's Association, amazing resources. We have a 24/7 all volunteer resource line. I think it's all actually people who are former dementia Alzheimer's caregivers who are supporting that. So please check that out. And then on our side, just to wrap this up, I first of all want to say thank you for giving your time to listen to this episode of Ask a NaviGuide. Kimberly, thank you for your time. This is part of the Abundant Aging podcast series that's brought to you by United Church Homes. If you like this week's episode, please like, share, and subscribe so we can bring you more of this content. You can find us at abundantagingpodcast.com. And you'll also find an opportunity to send some feedback to us. Was this helpful to you? What did you think? What did we get right? What did we not get right? Are there ideas for other shows that you would like us to cover? Please send us that feedback because we do want to turn this around and put out more content that you find meaningful. For more information about the United Church Homes NaviGuide program, please visit uchnaviguide.org. For more information about United Church Homes and our memory care program, which we call Comfort Matters, you can visit us at unitedchurchhomes.org. Lastly, if you are listening to this podcast past July of 2023, we are very likely to have our caregiver resource site up and running. That is abundantaging.org, also a place where you can send us feedback and check out resources that can hopefully support you as a family caregiver, paid caregiver, or someone that just cares about the needs of someone that may need a little bit more help. So thanks for listening. We will see you next time.